finished a great book with ideas that you knew could change your life, only to find that you can't remember the details when you actually need them? It's frustrating. All that time you spent reading and all those opportunities that you were excited about, gone. If you don't remember or apply what you've read, you're wasting both the book and your time. And worse, you're missing out on what those ideas could have done for you. So how do you stop that from happening? How do you actually remember what you read and use it so that every minute you spend learning gives you a return? Hi, I'm Angela. I've read hundreds of non-fiction books, and in the beginning, I forgot most of them, even if I took notes. That was partially what led me to start my business Reading Graphics in the first place. After 10 years of reading, testing, and applying book ideas in my life, I found a way to make what you read actually stick and pay off. It's all about aligning with how your brain naturally learns in 3 stages. Stay around to find out what these stages are and how you can learn more from the start, remember what really matters, and actually use those ideas to create real results in your life. Now, in a previous video, we explained that your brain is like a leaky bucket. You pour in knowledge, but without reinforcement, it all drains right out. To retain more of what you've read, you need to work with the brain's natural learning process, which happens in 3 stages. Here's a simple breakdown for my business Reading Graphics. Encoding happens the moment your brain absorbs new information. But here's the problem. Your brain doesn't store everything. It selectively chooses what seems important and holds it in the short-term memory, which is like a temporary notepad. If you don't reinforce it, most of the information disappears quickly. Once information is encoded, your brain needs to reinforce and store it in the long-term memory. This process is called consolidation. Each time you revisit a concept, you strengthen those memory pathways. Retrieval is the final and most important step. It's what separates temporary learning from permanent knowledge. Every time you retrieve and apply information, you strengthen your brain's neural pathways, making knowledge more accessible when you need it. So how do we make use of this? Let's break down each stage into practical steps that you can apply, starting with step 1. But before we dive in, let me say this up front. This approach takes a bit more effort because the goal is to read deliberately, but the payoff is worth it. Here's why. Let's say you spend 10 hours reading but only retain 10%. That's just 1 hour of real learning. But what if you invested the same 10 hours to read more deliberately and retain 90%? You walk away with 9 hours of effective learning. That's 9 times more effective than before, and that's a huge difference. These are real numbers. Research shows that people forget 50 to 90% of what they read. But with proper reinforcement, retention can jump all the way to 80 to 95%. These 3 steps can totally transform the way you interact and learn from books. So let's dive into the first step, encoding. To help your brain absorb new information, you need to engage with the content as you read. Not just skimming through the lines or flipping the pages, but actively processing what you're taking in. This is called active reading, and it's one of the simplest ways to level up your learning right away. Instead of waiting to reread a book when you forget something, try to lock in the ideas the very first time. So how do you do that? Let's look at some examples from this Reading Graphics video. Instead of skimming through pages, slow down to think about what you're reading. Ask yourself, what does this really mean? Do I agree? How does this relate to my life? Instead of starting a new chapter right away, pause and jot down key takeaways in your own words. After a focused reading session, instead of closing the book and calling it a day, try drawing diagrams or mind maps to capture how the ideas connect. Instead of reading silently, read the passages or your notes aloud to help your brain process it better. Personally, I don't like to write in my books, so I take notes separately. And I admit, I rarely go back to those notes. But that's okay, because the very act of thinking and writing notes already helps me to lock in the ideas better. That said, I do have a hack. 10 years ago, I started reading graphics because I kept forgetting what I read, or I couldn't find my notes where I needed them. So I thought, wouldn't it be nice if I could just see the entire book at a glance? So since then, my team and I have condensed hundreds of the best books on personal development, business and professional growth into infographic, text, and audio summaries. So these days, when I want to review a book, I don't hunt for my own notes anymore. I just pull out a summary. I still take notes to help my brain to absorb the ideas, but I use Reading Graphics for reference. So whether or not you're a subscriber, you can still use step 1 to get more from your reading up front. Don't just read the words. Actively process the ideas behind those words so your brain can remember them. Another reason that these steps work is because they tap on multimodal learning, which we'll use to further boost our learning in step 2, consolidation. Besides actively processing what you read, you must reinforce it. This helps to move knowledge from your short-term memory to long-term memory, a process that scientists call consolidation. The most effective way to do that is through multimodal learning. By revisiting the same ideas using different senses, your brain naturally learns better when you read actively and engage multiple senses, like reading, listening, writing, imagining, and doing. When you see an idea as a diagram, read it as text, and hear it explained aloud, you activate more regions of your brain. That's why in step 1, we suggested note-taking, sketching, and reading aloud. These concurrently tap into your visual cortex, speech, motor, and spatial systems as well. So how do you apply this? Let's zoom in on 2 simple ways to consolidate what you read using visual and audio reinforcement. Visual learning. When you turn ideas into images like infographics or mind maps, your brain can absorb more information as a whole. Instead of remembering 20 separate bullet points, you start to see the overall structure, recognize patterns, and chunk ideas into meaningful groups. Let's say you just finished reading How to Read a Book. 1 week later, how much will you actually remember? Besides reading more actively in step 1, you can consolidate the ideas by adding visual elements. Instead of relying on words alone, try sketching a rough mind map, drawing arrows or boxes to connect related ideas, or doodling ideas as if you're explaining them to a friend. Just a few minutes of visual reinforcement like this can help the ideas stick. If you are new to mind mapping, you'll find the book Mind Map Mastery to be very useful. I'll link the summary in the description for you. Audio learning. Listening taps into your brain's verbal and auditory systems, which are great for reinforcing ideas without additional screen time. Instead of focusing only on what your eyes can take in, here's how to use audio for consolidation. Use whole audiobooks to hear what you're reading, record yourself reading your notes aloud and then replay them the next day, or use audio summaries to refresh key concepts while you're exercising or commuting. I'm a visual kinesthetic learner, which means that I learn best when I see and do. But even so, I find that I remember better when I combine multiple modes, like reading, sketching, imagining, and listening. When I read, I picture the examples in my head and imagine how they apply to my life or business. After I finish a book, I usually review the infographic summary to see the big pictures and how the ideas connect. Then I'll zoom in on 1 to 2 ideas that I want to apply. And later in the week, I might replay the audio version while I exercise. If I think back a year later, I might not remember all the details still, but I almost always can see that visual snapshot in my head. And that's the power of visuals. In short, you need to reinforce to retain what you have read. Use visuals to chunk and reinforce those ideas, use audio to encode and refresh them, and combine multiple senses to activate more of your brain. This improves memory and retention and makes the learning more engaging and personal to you. And now, let's take it up another notch by learning how to apply the ideas when you need them, which leads us to step 3, retrieval. The final and most powerful step is to retrieve and apply what you've read. Because unless you use an idea, you will lose it. Each time you try to recall something from your memory, you actually strengthen the mental pathway that stores it. And when you apply the idea, it creates a feedback loop to test how it works in the real world, connect with your experiences, and you can learn from the results. But this is where most readers drop off because they don't make that critical step to make the insights applicable. Let's say you read The First 20 Hours by Josh Kaufman, which explains how to learn any skill. In this book, he outlined a 4-step process for learning. He even details how he used the technique to learn the ukulele quickly. But what if you are not interested in learning the ukulele? Maybe you want to play the piano instead. Kaufman's 4-step framework still works. But unless you pause to adapt the method to your goal and define your next step, you're likely to forget and never act on it. Why? Let's just look at the 4 steps. Even though Kaufman's ukulele example was very clear, it's not immediately obvious what you should do to learn piano. Without clear next steps, you're unlikely to take action. But let's say you just take 5 minutes to tailor the idea to your goal, which is to play 3 of your favorite songs before the year's end. To do that, you might need to learn the keyboard layout, hand placements, and fingering, and you might need to get a digital keyboard and a piano app. You can follow Kaufman's strategy to learn just 4 basic chords that work for thousands of songs, but you will start with your favorite song from Coldplay. By taking a few minutes to connect the concept to your goals, you're building mental bridges between the idea and your personal context, defining specific next steps, mentally rehearsing what's involved, and creating motivation by visualizing a meaningful outcome. All these reduce mental friction, making it more likely that you'll take the first step, which is to commit 1 hour this Sunday to do some research about piano and finalize your plan. Very often, I finish a good book with so many ideas swimming in my head, but the ones that I end up applying are always those that I spend time thinking about upfront, while the ideas are still fresh in my head. It's like saving an idea before it slips away. And here's a pro tip. To reduce mental resistance, you can use AI to help you with your brainstorming. But don't ask generic questions like, how can I apply this book to my life? So for example, if I want to brainstorm on how to use the specific steps from the first 20 hours, I will load the ReadinGraphics detailed text summary into the AI platform and ask for specific ideas based on my goal. That way, you actually get more relevant and practical suggestions that you can use. Ready to start remembering and using great ideas from your favorite books? Start with active listening to absorb the ideas as you read. Use multimodal reinforcement to strengthen your memory. And most importantly, use real-life application to lock it in and get real results. By aligning with the way your brain naturally encodes, consolidates, and retrieves knowledge, you get more from every great book that you read. And if you want a faster way to reinforce your learning, check out the ReadinGraphics free and paid resources linked in the description below. They're designed to help you to reinforce learning across all 3 steps. I'll see you in the next video, and let's keep growing together.